Thanks for reminding me. So you could kind of consider this, even though this is like a real production website, let's just kind of pretend like this is a wireframe of what we're going to be building. So we have like a login and register page. Then we have like and this available page. So what this is like so we're doing like a real estate app. And so this available page is going to be a list of properties by agent. Now, as you get these wireframes from like a designer or from like a product owner or product manager, they're not going to give you the associations. They're not going to say, hey, they might not know like the database lingo, but it might be so that like it's just how you say it in English is going to tell you how this works. But let's just kind of look at the features, and then from there we're going to have to kind of think about what the database should look like. So we have, it looks like this is going to be an agent, like a real estate agent. And real estate agents have properties that they can list. And so this available page is just going to list out by agent that agent's properties. And it's going to show the price, the beds, the bath, square footage, street, city, and zip. So here's all of Devin's properties. The reason Devin's in here twice is because Baker isn't giving us like unique values, but this is faker data. And then we have like another agent. There's that agent's properties and so forth. Cool. So this would be one page we need to build. Then we have this cities page. Now on the cities page, what we do is we're going to have a drop down where we can select a city. So I select, Salt Lake City, and that's going to give me all the properties in Salt Lake City. It's going to give me the price, the beds, the baths, and square footage. Cool. Then we're going to do like the find home page. So this one, we're going to have an agent, or we're going to have an agent drop down. So I'm going to be able to select one of my agents, and it actually shows me how many available properties that agent has. And that's how this list is sorted, by how many available properties they have, or i.e. properties that are for sale, like ones they have not sold. So I can select an agent. And then once I select an agent, that's going to give me a drop down of that agent's buyers. Because when you go buy a house, like, or with our company, when you buy a house, you select, like, you're going to be associated with an agent. And then I can select a buyer. And that's going to show me the buyers, like this list of properties that are within a price range. So a buyer is going to have like a min and max price range. And maybe we'll throw that on here so we can like see it. Maybe that's a feature we'll add. We can show the min or the max price range for a buyer. And a buyer is also going to have desired cities. So it looks like Lee only wants to live in Orem, Draper, or Provo. Cool. And so if I select Dave and there's nothing there, it looks like Dave probably or Todd has no properties that match Dave's like price range or like desired cities. Cool. So that's one feature. That's another page. And then we're going to have a city cost page. And this is just going to be a chart that averages the price of the properties by city. So, Sandy has a average, like the property's average price is I don't know, 700,000 or 800,000. This is not real data, but yeah. So that's kind of like the wireframe you might get. And then you'll have like, either the product owner or like the product manager who, let's just assume they know nothing about code. They're going to be the ones telling you what to build. So it can sometimes be a little weird when you have, not weird, but you have this interesting like power dynamic where like you have the product owner who's like telling you what to build, but they have no idea how to do it.
So
It's
I'm
kind of like
guessing,
that can be that way in like construction where you have like a project manager who's managing building the stuff, but they know nothing about like plumbing or electricians or framing. They're just managing it so it's done in a timely order. Was there a question?
yeah, sorry. So all this information is done through SQL, right? That's how we're able to filter everything, like get graphs like this.
Um,
Because this is pretty much what we did yesterday, right?
I mean, in a
Obviously,
way, like all of our apps that we built with Rails, use SQL.
yeah.
So I
I just
could
didn't know if
say,
we were doing more with it or not.
yeah, this is where it gets a little like, for this lecture, we're definitely going to be using SQL. There could be ways that like I could just like, I mean, once I set up my database, I could do like maybe 1 or 2 Axios calls and just give all my data back to the front end. And then it's all on the front end to like get the data so it like convert the data into the UI.
Right. So there's multiple ways to do it.
Yeah. And we're kind of going to do like a little bit of a combo where like, and it's more, I mean, I think like if I were to really build this app out, like in this were all the features, depending on how many like properties and agents I had, I don't know, you could easily probably just say, hey, I'm going to like in one API call, just give you back all the data for the front end. And then they just have it and then they can do whatever they want with it. For this, just to get some practice with SQL, and like this would also be the case you would want to do if it was like a big app, like a real estate app could potentially be. It's like think about like Zillow or like one of those big apps. You're not going to want to do one API call that just gives you back all of the data, because that'd be a ton of data. So you might want to like at least do it by like city or something. I don't know, but we're kind of going to do a little bit of a combo where it's like we're going to be doing stuff on the back end with SQL, giving the data back, and then there's still going to be a need for the front end to like kind of morph it into like what it needs for the UI. So it's going to be a little bit of like a balance, I would say.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, it really does just come down to like what you decide to do as like the dev team and how much data you have. So that kind of thing. But with this picture, we're kind of getting a pretty good idea of, what we want to build, right? I mean, this is like tells you exactly what we need to build. We maybe don't have to make it look, we'll say like, we don't have to make it look like this. We can be a little flexible with how it looks. This is just in a sense giving us what we want for each page. Cool. So this is like the bet, like if you get this as a like developer, this is awesome because this is like really clear. So what I'm going to do next, let's go. I think we've done like a little bit of Trello, right? But not really utilized it too much. So let's go to Trello. sorry, I was like, someone said that like the drummer for Foo Fighters died from the COVID vaccine. I was just like, you idiot. So I was like looking at that, went down the rabbit hole of Google last night. Anyway, I digress as I usually do. So this is Trello, and Trello's is going, and Nee's going to do a little presentation on this as well, but we're going to start in this last part of the course, we're going to start kind of utilizing product management and something called, at a high level, called Scrum or Agile development. Has anyone heard that term, Agile development? Or Scrum or Kanban or
Yeah.
the big
I
one?
think I've
Yeah.
heard of it.
Has anyone used it? Jessica, did you use it?
Yeah, I used a Jira board.
Yeah, Jira board. Yeah, I would be very surprised if you went to a company and they didn't have, especially in the tech world, especially today, you know, they're going to utilize some form of probably agile development. It'd be probably awesome if you found a job that didn't, but it's just going to do that. So let's kind of talk about what that is. So I'm going to create a board, and you can go to Trello as well and like sign up, and you don't have to like follow along with this. I'll make this board public so you can like clone it and do whatever you want with it. And you're going to be doing this on your own for like hackathon, for the next hackathon, and for your project. So you can kind of just sit back and watch, and can show you what we're doing. So I'm going to make a Trello board for this specific app we're building. So this is going to be like real estate. Spring 22. Cool. So Trello is a form of what's called like a Kanban board, which at a simple level, like the simple Kanban board looks like this, where you have like a to-do list, in progress, and done. So this is like a very simple, what's called a Kanban board. And it's, you know, it's kind of like this way you can kind of show the progress of where things are at. So eat, sleep, code. So, you know, I'm technically coding. Maybe if I've already slept, I need to eat. So you can like kind of see where you're at with stuff. Like I'm coding right now. I've already slept and I need to eat. So that's like the basic Kanban board. I'm going to switch this up a little though. Let me just rename this. So I'm going to create a couple more lists. I'm going to do like stories. I'm kind of going to keep the same idea, but I'm going to make a couple more lists. So I'm going to have like stories list, and like maybe I could also call this like requirements. Now this is just one way to do a Kanban board. I'm kind of like stealing this from how, not exactly, but this is how we did it at Evernym. Kind of looked a little something like this. It was a little more in depth, but this was kind of the what we used. So in our stories requirements, I'm gonna just copy some of these. So because I have one of these kind of filled out. This is where you would put like the main like features of your app. So I'm just going to copy this and then we can like look at this. I'm going to create a card. And then also before I continue, I'm just going to share this so you can see it. I forget. Public, anyone on only board. Okay, I'm gonna do public. So I'll throw this out in Slack so you should be able to now see this if you kind of, I don't think you won't be able to edit it, but you should be able to see it. So what I have here is like, I have a card that's just kind of going over like the main stories. And for this, you might even come up with these like characters in your app. So like I have this character named Alice, and I can think of Alice as like the person who, like the user of the app. I could have like a user called Andy, and Andy could be like an admin person. I could have like a Deepak person and Deepak's a developer. So you have like, you can get all these different characters, and it's just so like you can communicate with like the product manager about, like the developers can communicate with like project managers and like the designers about what we want to do. And this is kind of stuff we looked at, like, so here are the requirements. Could be another way, instead of like, because maybe even before you have the wireframes, you know, you kind of need to tell your designers what to build. So it all generally starts out with like text, like words. So we want to find all for sale homes. Like as Alice, I want an available page. This should show the listing by real estate agent and should display the price, number of beds, bathrooms, square footage, street, city, and zip. So that's like, you know, as Alice, I want to come to an available page and see, you know, price, beds, bath, square footage by the, like organized by agent. So then the, you know, the designer would be like, okay, let's come in and design this page. And then that could be like, I could even break that up into like its own little story. Available. Okay, and then we have like finding all for sale homes by city. As Alice, I want a cities page, sites page, or it should be cities. This should first have a drop down grabbing all the available cities, and from there I can select the city. Once I select the city, I should see the price, number of beds, bathrooms, etc. So you kind of see how this is like, before you start coding, like especially like if this is a legit app, you know, with lots of like money behind it, there's going to be a lot of planning, and you're going to get all these requirements. And this is like, this in and of itself is like just bare minimum. Like these would be much more detailed, but it's just kind of trying to give you like the high level idea. Like this is probably, you know, when you go start working, you might like get into like, you know, this like describing what you want to do before you start coding it. Like, and so there we have like this for sale homes by cities. And that's, you know, what this is. I want to select the city and then see all the properties in that city. And, you know, for like these, like, I'm not going to do it, but, you know, more info about this feature. So you just spend all this time before you are coding to really think about what you want on like these cards, or like what you want this feature to really be. So more detail about this feature. does that, we don't have to go through all of these, but does that kind of make sense how we're, you know, you would, and you would probably as a developer, you might be involved in this process of like, you know, writing these stories. Or I know at like my last place, like the project manager would like, they'd just be pages and pages of like descriptions for like a story, and it would just be like adding a new feature to the app. But he's like, here are the things we need done for this feature to be complete. So, you know, there might be like a checklist of like, you know, these would be like what needs to be done, like a drop down to select all cities. And, you know, these should only be only ones in our DB. Like grab properties and selected, etc. Like these can be like just many, like here are all the requirements that you need for this. Like for this. Cool. But let's just, yeah. And then, so if we're looking at like our main features, we have like this available feature, we have a cities feature, we have a like finding home for a specific buyer. So let's just call this like the buyer's feature. And then we have like the city price feature. I'm not going to go in detail these, but this can be a way, you know, I can now break this app up into like these, you know, 4 features. Cool. Let's see here. I'm gonna do this here. Okay, so I would say like another or something. So another column I'm going to add is like a backlog. Another backlog. And I'm going to switch this to do to name to like on deck. And then, yeah, this one can still be in progress. And then we'll worry about this part later. But so what I'm going to do a backlog for is, it's a lot. So what we eventually start doing is, I can now that I maybe have a decent idea of what I want to start building, I can start writing like to-dos. And the reason I'm separating, I'm kind of having 2 separate to-do columns, a backlog and an on deck. The reason I'm doing that, it's just a way to like organize it, because it's going to be a lot easier to like say, hey, here's what we need to do, than actually build it out. For example, well, let me just ask you this, like, how long do you think this is going to take to build? That's always an important question. Like we went through the features, we spent, you know, like 15, 20 minutes going through the features. And then like the next question, like someone's probably going to ask you, like the project managers, like now that we're all on the same page of what we need to build, the project managers might ask you something like, how long is this going to take? So how long do you think this is going to take to build?
Like if we individually did this?
Yeah, individually, or you could like, yeah, answer like individually or as a group, or yeah, you could say individually. That's fine.
I don't even know. I guess it depends. Like maybe a day or 2, depending on how long you spend on it.
Yeah, it's
I'm gonna need at least a year.
it's yeah, the range is from a day to a year.
I need all the money up front, please.
Yeah. So there's kind of like, yeah, it's a very hard question to answer. You get a little better at it when you like kind of have been through the process of like, how long is it going to take? It's also a little easier to maybe be like, how long is this available feature going to take? And then it might be a little easier to answer how long is the city's going to take, like after you've done the available feature. So it's a hard question. It's something I really encourage to, like, I had a college professor who was like, just start guessing. Like you don't have to be right. Just as you're going through the homework, just guess how long it's going to take. Just try to like make an estimate on how long this homework's going to take, just so you can start getting that kind of loose intuition of how long things take to do. But one thing we could start to think about, like, well, before we just throw out a number, like, let's think about some things we need to do. Right? So, and this can be a good way because now we're kind of just in like prepping mode. We don't have to code. This is a time where we're not coding. We're just thinking about what we need to do, and we can start by doing that instead of just like hopping into the code. We can actually probably save ourselves a lot of headaches and a lot of troubles by, planning this out a little bit. And then once we come up with a little plan, we might have like 20 tasks, and then we can be like, oh, I kind of can guess better on how long those tasks are going to take. So what kind of things do we need to do? Like, we're starting out, this is what we have. So now this might be like, you might have a meeting with your project manager, but now it's like it's like the dev team. So now you're talking with like your developers. And so now this can be a more technical conversation. And like the project manager might be there to kind of, listen in and kind of answer questions. Because the project manager is kind of going to be like the person who you go to when you have questions, like, because they're defining the requirements. So you can't just be like, well, the project manager's stupid. He doesn't know what he's talking about, or she doesn't know what she's talking about. So I'm going to just like do it my own way. Like, no, they're like the boss. They're telling you what to do. So you have to get like a lot of the time you have to get like their approval. They can definitely be flexible sometimes. It's like, hey, can we change this up a little bit? And they might be like, sure, or maybe not. So let's kind of have more like technical conversations. So what do we need to do to start coding this? And once we
need to create the database.
Yep. So I'm going to do like DB design. One thing, usually I'd be like, wireframes would be nice. We have those, so we can be like, yay, wireframes are done. So another card I might add or list. This doesn't have really anything to do with the flow, but this like a resources card, because I might want to have some like, links here, because now this Trello board can become like a way to organize, because projects can get like very complicated, like, and there can be like a lot of different like, third-party libraries or a lot of different links. So now I can start like maybe organizing this stuff. So like, for example, let's pretend this is our wireframe. I could say like wireframe link to wireframe. And this is Markdown, so I always forget how to, if it's this one first or. So I can do like a link. So as I go through, like I can start like just being a little more organized. So if I'm like close out of this wireframe, like, oh man, where's my wireframe? I can be like, oh yeah, I can just go to my Trello board. It's in that links. There it is. Cool. You know, and like, because like this is going to grow, right? We're going to have like, you could have like a lucid chart here. Or like GitHub, etc. Just whatever kind of grows here. Sweet. Okay, so we have our database design. What else do we need to do?
Like everything in the database is like mapped out. Is that what you're saying with that?
I'm saying like, so this is like, I would say this is like design. So for this task, I'd be like, this is like design a DB diagram in lucid chart, you know, get it approved by like the DB person, right? This would be like, pre-code step. So here we might want to like think about like, when we're thinking about like database design, you know, it's like, this is going to kind of force us to be like, okay, you know, what associations do we have? You know, what data do we need? Tables, etc. That's going to like kind of force us to like really get our database design down. Cool. So I could kind of like throw stuff in this card about like, you know, what we need to do. So inside of here, I could have like, you know, just to-do lists inside of to-do lists. There's just one, this Trello is just one big nested to-do list. Cool. So yeah, what else? I mean, and we don't have to kind of worry about order right now. I mean, we kind of will want to think about order, but we can just start throwing out like, what do we need to do? So the DB designs, like, that's perfect. That's yes, 100% need that. Start throwing out ideas.
Well, if you're doing the database design, you might want to do like some front end design if they haven't already done that.
Yeah, so front end, that would be good, the front end design, but yeah, I'm just saying that one is done.
Okay.
That would definitely be 100% yes.
Yeah, I'm assuming that they'd probably need to have wireframe in order to tell you what to do.
For sure. I think these two, like, well, it's kind of like this. It's like we have our requirements. I'd say those three things of like having the basic requirements, the database design, and like kind of a general idea of what it looks like. Those are by far like the three most important things before you start coding. So yeah, we have our wire. So I could say like, let's just say like requirements. Let's call this actually gather requirements. So we'll say that step's done. So we gathered our, because that's probably going to be the first step, gather your requirements. How are you going to do the wireframes if you don't have the requirements? How are you going to do the database if you don't have the requirements? So let's just put like a 1. And then, yeah, I would say like the wireframes, this would kind of be like 2-3, like the second or third step. And same thing with like the database design. Like, it doesn't really matter which one you do first, but those are kind of like your next things. But let's say we have our, let's just say this is done. So what would we maybe want to do after we're done with the database design?
Start coding it.
Well, see, yeah, getting a little ahead because we're just talking about what we need to do.
Yeah.
Because and yeah, start coding it.
I mean, if you've already designed your front end and back end, wouldn't you just want to?
But so yeah, let's
I
just
don't know
start.
what else is there.
Well, start. So here's the thing. It's like this is the skill of coding. What makes I think what like makes me like be able to do coding, because coding is very complicated. It's like it's breaking things up before like into smaller pieces.
So it's having someone set up the back end, like that being the next thing is set up.
Yeah. So one of the things about breaking up stuff into smaller parts is just being able to describe what you want to do, like out loud in English. And especially when you're working with a team, because let's say, like Joe, you said, like, let's just start coding. Well, let's say there's like 6 of you. Well, who's going to work on what? You all just can't start coding. You're going to have to communicate about who's working on what.
Okay.
So this is why we need to be like, before we start coding, let's come up with a big old list of things we need to do.
Got it. That makes sense.
So someone, was that you, Sharia? Did you say something
Yeah.
about like the back end?
Setting up the back end and then having another one set up the front end. Or it's got to be broken down even further.
Yeah, because that's another step. Like, yeah, I could say do some back end and front end. That's I would say let's try to really break this down into like parts that then could be organized by like in order. Because the one nice thing about Trello too, we can start like ordering these, and then there can be like this visual hierarchy about, there's this kind of left and right hierarchy and like this vertical hierarchy. So let me maybe give some suggestions. So since we spent all this time down like doing our starter project, I'm just going to say like create project, or like let's just do setup project from starter project. I could do like,
Would they have like a starter project that they'd want us to use, or would someone just like use their own? How would that work?
well, okay, let's say this like this, because yeah, they're probably not going to have a starter project. Let's just call this create project. Like this is going to be the task. So yeah, you'd probably be something like this, hey, let's like create the project. And then even with this ticket, like I could come in and I could be descriptive about this, like, this is going to be a Rails app with a React client app. I could think about like the, what, gems, packages do I want? And you could say something like auth. Well, oh man, auth is huge. Auth should be its own ticket, auth. And then you could probably split up auth into like subcards. So this could be like just creating the project, or like, let's just say like initial setup. This could be like a pretty big, task. And then you could like break this up into steps of like, creating a Rails app, client app in it, adding gems, adding React router, which would like I said, these become like their own, probably their own little small tasks. But we're going to just say like, these are done. We're just going to use our starter project. But then I could also say like, hey, what kind of things like do we need? Let me see if what kind of things like would I consider this to be done? Like I might say like all team, members, have a project running locally. Yeah, I'd say like, that could be like a good first step. Just that initial setup. This could be pretty involved, but we're going to use our starter project. So this is actually going to be pretty straightforward. Then after that, I could do like a GitHub step. GitHub could be like, and maybe like, this is where you can kind of like, maybe this could be part of like the initial setup where I could just add it here, like, and I think I will. I think this could be like fine to do here, like create GitHub account, add all team members to GitHub repo. And then you might do like, we'll talk about this next week. You might like set up, a system. I'm just going to call this a system to commit to push. We're going to start using like branches and pull requests. So we're going to start showing, hey, like you can no longer push to master. We're going to disable that feature on GitHub, or disable that, ability to push to master. And what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to push to a branch and then do a pull request to merge that to master. Now, you don't know what that means, but that can be part of like this initial project setup. Cool. So I don't need this like GitHub stuff. Okay. So yeah, we've set up, now we can think about this. We have our wireframes, we've done our database design, we've done this initial setup. And even within there's kind of like these steps of like what this includes or what this entails. So after this point, everyone would have, had GitHub set up, everyone would have, this project. What might be a good thing to do next? I'll just say it. There's not like necessarily a right or wrong answer. I think like, just that initial like model creation and like and seating DB. Now we might need, I'd say to like fully work on this one, or like to really, like this is kind of hard to like start doing this without our database design done, but you know, I think we can kind of like understand what this means, right? Like as a team, let's go build out all of our models, rels, and you know, seed DB. Yeah. And then, you know, maybe we could do the same thing with like initial, you know, controller creation. You know, I'm not really not so concerned about getting them functional. Let's just build them out. And then maybe, you know, maybe I could do this with like the same thing with like build out, just like stub components, you know, navigation. And so this isn't like this isn't about getting this isn't to get it functional. You know, it really just is to like to create, you know, the main pages and set them up in nav. Like we've been doing in like lecture. Cool. But we're getting, so like we kind of have like, I mean, I'll just like throw these all in here. Like, you know, we're coming up with like a pretty good game plan. Gather requirements, do the wireframes, do the database design. You know, this is the initial like project setup. You know, go in, create our models in the seeds file, maybe. I might, oh, it's right here. Then, you know, maybe just that initial controllers, so forth. And then right here, this is like maybe a good spot to start like breaking up work. Now, I think this is like maybe like Sharia was kind of leading to this. I think once we get to this phase, something we can start doing with this is I think now we can start to maybe separate the front end and the back end. But I think we can also separate not only just the front end and back end, but we can kind of separate it by requirement. So I could maybe have like an available, like someone's going to do this available feature and they're going to focus on like the back end part of it. I'm going to have an available, you know, task, and, you know, that's going to be the front end. You know, there's that cities part. There's going to be a back end portion to that. And let's think about like, I'm just going to do this one in particular. So like normally, yeah, you'd like spend some time thinking about what these entailed. So let's look at an example. Let's do the city price. because this one has kind of like a unique little feature to it. So let's say I'm trying to like kind of maybe time guess this one. Like, how long do you think this city price is going to take? Well, let's see what it entails. Well, it's nice we have that our wireframe done. So we go to city cost. Oh man, there's like a chart on here. So one of the things you can start to do as you're kind of planning, and this, this can come into like your like time estimate, like how long does it take to do a chart? What I'm kind of looking for a specific answer here.
It can't take that long.
I would say like the answer is like, I don't know. I've never done a chart before. You could probably say something like it shouldn't take that long, but
Yeah,
it's
my
fine to
point.
say like, ooh man, there's a feature like I've never done before. I don't know how long that's gonna take. Like, I need to like investigate that. Like, ooh, charting. Need to look into that. So then that would be like, that becomes a task, like look into charting. Because you're going to want to start this task before you do the front end on this, like the city price. So this can be another useful thing about like planning this out is you can like, you can see these like, this is like a roadblock. It's like, dude, I don't know how to do this. So I need to like investigate that. So you can like with your team, you can see potential roadblocks, or you can, think, oh, this might be problematic. Like that seems like, I don't know, especially like if I didn't have a third-party library, like, dude, I don't even know if I could, you might be like, I don't even know if this is possible. So, and it's going to be much better to say that. It's so much better to say like, oh man, I don't know if this is possible at the start versus saying, yeah, I can do this really quickly. And then you start working on it. And then it's like a week later and they're like, I thought you said you could do this really quickly. And then you're like, well, I guess I didn't know. So I think like this time when you're like really like thinking about what you want to be doing and how long it's going to take, I think as a developer, you don't want to like be like, oh yeah, this is going to take a year, because then they'll be like, okay, well, you should probably not be working here. But it's a time you do, I think you can give yourself some like protection, some padding with like, the expectations from like the company or from the project manager. And like just be upfront. It's like, I don't know. I've never done charting. So I can't give you a time estimate because I don't know. So err on the safe side when you're like guessing time. But yeah, there's like I said, there's also a limit to that. You can't just be like, oh, this is going to take me 10 years. Then they'll be like, well, duh. Does that make sense though?
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's much better to ask for time up front than 2 weeks later, 2 weeks into it when you said it took a week. And it's okay. It's definitely like, even like the most, experienced people can be like, this is going to take me a day and it takes you a week because you ran into a bug. Or you could say, hey, this is going to take me a week, and then it ends up taking you a day. So you can kind of, big, oh yeah, I think that's the other, like, if you say it's going to take a week and it takes a day, don't like draw out the whole week because you said it would take a week and you got done in a day, because it goes both ways. So. But you see how now, and like, as we go through, we'll even like go stub out more in particular what we want to do, because actually with all of these, like, I'll just kind of do it for one of these, but for like the backend tickets, these are all just, and this is just kind of how like we're doing this app. It's kind of going to follow this same flow of like, there's going to be a couple steps to like doing our backend features. It's like we need to figure out how to send data. And then once we do that, we're going to like figure out SQL call in SQL Electron, whatever the hell the name is. And then we're going to like set up routes and controllers stuff in Rails. And then, we're going to connect our SQL to Rails. So, and then we're going to test. This is just like general outline of how we're going to do the backend features. For like a front end feature, let's see if I can. A front end feature is going to like kind of follow these loose steps, where we're going to like, this may or may not be done, but we'll just like kind of say like set up page with React router, depending on how we do the initial setup, but that might be part of the step. So that'd be our first step. And then the next step would be like, get data. That's going to be our Axios call. And then there's going to be like there's going to be this step of figuring out how to do the UI with dummy data. And because it's going to be a little complicated. Like you're going to see this app looks very simple, but it's not going to be, this is going to be like a complicated app behind the scene, like under the hood. So being able to break this up into steps, this is really going to help us out. If we can just kind of say for all of these features, here's what we're going to be doing. So this step right here, what I'm going to want us to do is like in like, code sandbox. Let's just go try to figure out how to get the UI working with some dummy data. And we'll kind of see what that means. But like, if I want, like, for example, like if I go to available, even with this, like we're going to get dummy data and we're going to try to create this UI. This is not necessarily a nice UI or an easy UI to duplicate, because we have like a list of agents, and within that list, there's like a table. So this might be like kind of hard to like even just create this UI. Like this is going to be very nested, a nested UI. So we're going to do this step of just how do we make this thing look the way we want it to look? And then there's going to be this normalized step. sometimes. Not all the times. This is going to happen sometimes. And this step is going to be like, getting, steps. Or this is kind of like getting our data from step 2 to match what our UI wants that we did in step 3. I don't know if this makes sense right now, but when we get our data from our Axios call, there a lot of these times, and when we do our UI, these two are not going to match. We're not just going to be able to get our data and like magically create our UI with how our data is coming back. So we need to do this step of like making these two play nice. And then the 5th step will be like use actual data for our UI in our project. And then like, as always, we're going to test. Now these steps might be like when you're planning out, this might be a little harder to come up with. Like these like inner to-dos of this to-do. This might be a little harder to like kind of say exactly, but this is also still just rough outline. It's not like exactly. So I think you could maybe like, hey, these are the steps involved for doing this feature, kind of as like a rough outline. But now we have like and I could do this for cities and like available, but I think now we have like a pretty good roadmap of what we need to do. Agree, disagree?
Yeah. Would you want to like split it up to individual people now?
Yeah, well, I would say maybe there's maybe some parts where like it'd be hard. Like there are some parts that are dependent on steps. Some parts are not. Like the gather requirements needs to be done. Like the wireframes need to be done.
Yeah.
We really need to like, I would say, and these need to be done in order. And so I'm going to put them on deck. I would say we really need to like do these 3 steps, and we need to do them in order before we could start. These 2 could kind of maybe be optional depending on how we choose to do it, but I would say these 3 steps would be things we'd want to do as a group. And then we could probably start breaking these up. So let's take a break, but then when we get back, we'll go do our database design, we'll clone down our project, get GitHub set up, and create our database. Cool. So let's come back. Let's just call it 11 o'clock. See you then.